Hey everybody, it's Andre from the Eaglesoft Field Guide. I'm here with my buddy Hootan Shahidi, and Hootan is my go-to guy for anything, and you guys will see it all the time when there is a medical billing question. I'm yelling his name because that's not my forte. That's his, and that's why I asked him to be here today, because there's so many questions about medical billing when it comes to Eaglesoft. So he's my go-to guy. So I called him and said, hey, let's spend a couple minutes and talk about this. So how's it going there, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on here, and glad I could help in any way possible.
I haven't seen you since I was in Atlanta the last time.
I know, man. You don't come down here enough. I don't go to the cities where you are enough.
I think it might be a restraining order against me in Atlanta.
And don't you have family down here or something like that?
I do. Well, a couple hours away in Montgomery. So I'll be down, and I'll be in Birmingham coming up soon. But you know,
cool.
Yeah, but I really wanted to try to open up this question because everybody always says, you know, what's the best way to bill medical through Eaglesoft? And my answer is always call Hootan, because your background is working in a dental office, but now you run a company that does all this medical billing stuff. So tell me a little bit about how you do it.
So we're an outsourced solution. So essentially, we have an online system that anybody with any practice management system can go on and do some basic data entry and get that information in for us to process the claim. Now, back when we created that portal in 2013, part of the reason was most of the practice management softwares did not address medical billing at all. As in, there was no function whatsoever. Since then, over the last 5-6 years, some companies or some practice management softwares have made some adjustments. Eaglesoft, I think it was on 19, made it so that you can print a claim form. And while that might be very helpful in a lot of situations, there's a handful of states who have Blue Cross Blue Shield that don't accept mailed claims. So you truly have no choice but to go fully digital and have a clearinghouse and be able to submit that claim through a clearinghouse. And so that's all the stuff that we have. In addition to that, obviously we've been doing this a long time, so we make sure it's done right. An old client of ours earlier today on Facebook posted, he basically started doing claims on his own a few years ago. And he's like, yeah, I'm not getting paid. And so the first two things that jumped in my mind was, one, he may not be doing it through a clearinghouse, and so things are getting lost in the mail, or they're not accepting mail. And then the second thing I thought was, well, the coding is probably not right. Some of the CPT codes and diagnosis codes don't match up, so now you're having a problem. So not only do we have the technology side, but we have the expertise to back it and make sure you get the best results from your claim submissions.
And what do you see as like the low-hanging fruit that most offices are just kind of passing up on? What code range or what types of procedures are the best things to get started in? Because I know a lot of people jumped in and got disappointed. So what should people be looking at getting in?
It's actually going to be your D0s.
Okay.
So D0120, D0140, D0330, D0367. So all of your diagnostic stuff. So your exams, your bite wings, PAs, panos, Ceph, CT. Those are not only kind of the most straightforward claims, but they're probably the ones you do the most. And they're also a good way to become acclimated. A lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes what happen with offices is they'll be like, oh, well, I've got this all-on-6 implant case for a type 2 diabetic who's on like medication that's causing xerostomia. My claim got denied. Medical billing sucks.
Right.
Well, you probably started out with a really difficult case. God knows what that one single human's plan benefits were. And there's so many different plans. I know we think there's a lot of plans on the dental side. There's probably tens of thousands of more on the medical, and each of them are even more nuanced. So you can have slight variations that completely affect your claims. And if you didn't cast a wide enough net when you first start medical billing, I could easily see how you would give up. But if you casted a wide enough net across a number of things, so beyond the diagnostic and imaging, you threw in oral surgery, you threw in appliances for sleep apnea and TMD, you threw up some trauma, you should be pretty happy. You should do pretty good.
Yeah. And that's what I typically find is that somebody goes to a course course, and then they come back and now they're a medical billing expert in the office, and then they come back with that story that, I went to all these courses, I learned everything I needed to do, but it still doesn't work. And that's why it really makes a big difference just using an outsource who can do it right and get it done.
Sure, and plus the labor side of it, our system, we basically get paid on claims payments. So let's say, for example, like our company spends 10 hours battling out this claim that eventually denies. In that scenario, you would not owe code anything. But if your employee in your office was pursuing it for 10 hours and say that person gets $15 an hour, you're already down $150 in direct costs, and God knows how much money in opportunity cost.
Sure. Yeah. Now you do a lot of seminars, a lot of courses.
Yes, sir.
Do you have those listed like on your website?
Yeah, crossoverdental.com is our website. And I do a number of like dinners and intro type things, 2-3 hour programs. And then in addition to that, roughly about 5 to 8 times a year, in partnership with 3D Dentist, my buddy T-Bone, we do a 1-day course. And what that 1-day course is designed to do is not to empower the office to do it on their own, because that's virtually impossible to do in 1 day, but it's designed to get them to implement a successful workflow using us. Yep. So in prior years, like 2017 and earlier, you basically signed up online for us, and you still can. Then you could kind of ask us for help and support along the way. Then we thought about, well, why don't we accelerate that process and have them spend a day with me for the same price as signing up online. So they're identically the same price, basically like the course would be free. And then I could essentially kickstart them with a number of tools over a 7-8 hour period that they could implement the following Monday and be very successful, or be at least more successful than if they had no training whatsoever.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before. A lot of the things that we talk about in the Eaglesoft Field Guide are, if we set things up properly, then it makes your job, code's job, so much easier. We can set up auto notes. If we can set up the coding properly, then those things help your process to go so much smoother and for the office to get paid, right?
Yeah, the 3 things that come up the most for us with our Eaglesoft users is, one, how do I manage the ledger in terms of, now we might start charging for things that we weren't charging for before, that we were doing for free because dental doesn't cover it. Mm-hmm. 2, now if our production is inflated, how do we actually record our real production number, which for me is a bizarre question. So I'll come back to that and I'll explain why it's bizarre. I think you probably already know why. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is, well, God, my doc's so lazy, for lack of a better word. He or she is refusing to do the notes. I'm the office manager. I want to get these claims out. What do I do? And so there's a variety of answers to that. I'm better at the third one. I think you're probably a little bit better at the first 2. Not a little bit. You're significantly better at the first 2. And so let's go ahead and start with the first one. The ledger. Basically, Andre, what seems to be the biggest problem is there are some offices who are so dependent on the in-network value for something that now that we're asking them as out-of-network providers to submit all the time as UCR, either that affects their coverage book, or they don't have Eaglesoft set up to where maybe inside the ledger it is showing in-network prices, right, but the claim is leaving out with UCR.
Yep.
So that's a big one. I don't know if it comes up in your posts or not.
All the time.
But don't be surprised about that. Do you have any suggestions for that, real quick, for your viewers?
The way we set up things, and again, the way that I set up Eaglesoft is specific to the office. So again, if they're working with code, I go, okay, I know what you're going to run into. So let's set Eaglesoft up so that we see those things, so that we have a line in the sand that says prior to July 1st of 19, you were billing out X. Afterwards, we're looking at this. So yeah, it's something. The setup is what we were talking about. Setup is critical.
Okay. And then the second one, in regards to, well, our production report is going to be inflated. I understand what the person is communicating to me, but at the same time, what it's telling me is that your previous production reports were deflated. Yep. Because you simply weren't putting it on the ledger. So your idea of production is flawed to begin with, because all this free stuff that you bundled in, you just weren't charging. There was an office yesterday, I spoke to the doctor directly, and basically it was a trauma case, really bad case. And so this patient had met their deductible fairly early into the year. And we were talking and stuff like that. And I was like, listen, this case looks unbelievably complicated. You really got this done in 3 visits? He goes, no, where'd you get that from? And I said, I have 3 claims. And he goes, no, the patient was here at least 12 times. And I said, well, okay, where are those? He goes, well, they're not in the ledger. So essentially this professional took 30, 40 minutes per visit. In addition to the visits, also relined the denture. And none of that was charged up. So I don't necessarily know if it's quote inflated or if it's just more accurate.
Right. Yeah. And everybody who's been to a physician realizes that every time you go, there's going to be a submission to the insurance for those visits.
Correct. You know, and it's not just, and it's just not in healthcare. You know, people always relate it to that. I don't know what attorney you call for free. I don't know what accountant you do stuff with that is. I don't know what professionals you're seeing where this stuff is not going to be recorded on some kind of ledger where you're going to eventually be billed. My argument also from an auditing standpoint is your notes and the ledger should never be separate. As in, this doctor, really nice guy, and I know he's nice. It was out of being kind that he didn't want to charge this patient, and that's great. But you can't have 2, 3 different procedures in your notes and there's nothing on the ledger. For me, and Andre, please correct me if I'm wrong, I would still rather record it in the ledger and zero it out or write it off or whatever, so that the 2 match, that they're never like one, ledger and notes are completely separate entities.
Yeah. Yeah, and the people in the group will know I use admin codes for those kinds of things, those try-ins, those wax-ups, all those visits that we typically don't try. But again, there should be a line item for every single thing that
every single month.
And now we're talking about, pro-stop care, recall care, those kind of things should be recorded and billed accordingly,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the third one, those auto notes, this is probably the most significant thing. It might arguably be the most difficult initially, but it is by far the largest reward by a long shot. And that's setting up auto notes. And so, you look at just a few cases, for example, like for those doctors who are doing sinus lifts, typically that procedure and the reason for it are almost always identical, in that it's roughly the same surgical technique. It's because the patient has some kind of maxillary atrophy in 1 or 2 quadrants in the posterior. Great. Why don't we sit down just one time, nail down that one soap note, and keep replicating it. If we have cone beam and we do CBCT on healthy teenagers to see where their IA canal is, well, that's another soap note. How much variation is there between healthy, teenagers? So I've talked to some of our clients, the ones that I call prolific, in that they're able to submit, say, 20 to 50 claims a week. And in every single case, there is no exception. Every single one of those doctors is not doing an original soap, but simply loading up a pre-made template into Eaglesoft, then modifying it based on some maybe new findings or some different tooth numbers, and that's it. And so there may be, instead of doing a brand new soap note each time, which may take 5 or 10 minutes, they're loading up an old one and augmenting it for 30 seconds to 60 seconds.
Yeah, and we've talked about this too. This is one of my passions, is to try to create these notes so that we don't hear the argument. I hear it all the time. And I go in offices and I still see written in notes, 12 DO. And I go, are you kidding me? And
okay, you got a little bit of ways to go before medical billing kicks in.
Yeah, it's scary that those things are still happening, and we're on the same page there too. So let's do this. Best way for people in the group to catch up with you, because again, I always just sort of, I tag you in these responses to just say, reach out to Hootan. So best way to get.
Andre, real
Yeah,
quick,
go.
before I give my contact info, there is one thing I did want to suggest.
Go.
That might be a little bit easier for your viewers and your team members that are listening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at least for my testing of Eaglesoft 19, in order to do a medical claim, you need to, especially if medical is going to be primary, you need to remove all the dental insurance information, pop in the medical, produce the claim, pop out the medical insurance, put back the dental, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So instead of doing that via Google, there's a few websites that provide a usable PDF, front and back of the CMS 1500 form. My recommendation would be is to download that CMS 1500 form, type in, because one of the other mistakes I hear from people who try to do their own medical billing occasionally is, well, I did it by hand. That might have gotten kicked out immediately. So go ahead and you can type in on the form, and it's a little bit easier and a little bit cleaner, and most importantly, you don't have to do this back and forth process with Eaglesoft, which might not only cause errors for you on the claim, but might actually mess up some of your information, like remaining benefits and all that sort of stuff. So that might be a suggestion for some of your, I know your offices maybe are trying to only do 2 claims a year because, dental is forcing them or something like that. In that scenario, just go get a usable PDF form.
Cool. All right. So I'll have to find a link and I'll put it into the notes under the video. So
I will send you one as soon as we disconnect. I'll send you a link.
Perfect. You're the man. So tell everybody how to get in touch with you, and that way they won't call me directly; they'll call you directly.
Yeah, no problem. So again, our website is crossoverdental.com. Our phone number is 818-306-5106. And if you want to email me directly, it's going to be my first name, Hootan, at codeclaims.com. That's claims with an S, so codeclaims.com.
All right, and I'll give everybody your home number too, just in case.
I don't have a home number.
Neither do I. I mean, that's the weirdest thing. And everybody knows anyway.
I haven't had a home number from when I left UCLA. I lived at home, but when I went to graduate school at Emory, this was 2002. That was the last time I ever had a home number.
That's funny. Yeah,
I've been cell phone since 2002.
That's it shows my age when I say home number now. Well, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate it, and I promise when I get back to Atlanta, we'll catch up.
Yeah, let's do it, buddy.
All right, thanks again.
I appreciate you, man.